Welcome to the Truth in My Days podcast, where we defend the Word of God against the challenges of men.
Hello, this is Sonia Torres. I'm here with Truth in My Days director John Torres for a discussion about another important topic. John, one of our listeners asked if we checked out Myth Vision. So we went to YouTube. There's a video called Dr. Bart Ehrman's Top 3 Favorite New Testament Contradictions. Have you seen it?
Yes.
What can you tell us about that man being interviewed, Dr. Bart Ehrman?
Dr. Ehrman is a rather well-known New Testament scholar. He's written a number of books that have sold very well, actually. I think the one that really was the breakthrough for him was one called Misquoting Jesus, which introduced textual criticism to the masses. But he's written a number of other ones, mostly popular level, the idea being to introduce these so-called findings of liberal scholarship to the general public. Ehrman tells his story of how he was, in fact, an evangelical originally and went to seminary. And it was in seminary that he began to develop doubts first about the inerrancy of the Bible and then about Christianity in general. He's since become an agnostic, and he spends most of his scholarly efforts on challenging Christianity and trying to convince us the Bible's not reliable and Christianity is not true. So that's Ehrman. And in this particular video, he's being interviewed by the host of Myth Vision. I'm not even sure what his name is. And he is asked to discuss his 3 favorite contradictions in the New Testament. Now, as we go into his other contradictions, he's going to cite a couple more. And before we get into them, I think I need to make some points about historical accounts. Because if we understand these, and unfortunately liberal scholars tend not to, either don't or don't want to understand these things, it's important for us to understand it. And if we do, we will find that discrepancies tend to disappear. What happens here, okay, when you have multiple people writing about the same historical event, there will be differences. There will be discrepancies because each writer chooses what to include. Unless you have a very, very, very short issue where every writer decides to include everything, you will have differences. That doesn't make them wrong because each writer gets to choose what to include, what not to include, how to word it, how to structure it. And unless there are statements between two of them that absolutely cannot be reconciled, it's not a contradiction. It's simply a discrepancy. Now, there are discrepancies when you compare the gospel accounts. There are 4 of them. And as I said, every writer chooses what to include, what not to include. And John, interestingly, near the end of his gospel book, comments that Jesus did so many things that if everything were written down, the world itself could not hold all the books, which, by the way, I think is at least a veiled reference to his deity, because no human being could do so many things. No mere human being could do so many things that they could not all be written down within a storage space of the entire world. But as God, yes, he could. But that's an aside. The point here is that there are differences, and that's what you find in every description of historical events where more than one person is doing it. Skeptics like Ehrman like to point at these and act as if these are unusual. The problem is that liberal scholars don't ever, at least I've never seen them do this, which we have done, and the article is on our website, where we take a contemporary event reported by more than one person, and we compare their accounts to see what kind of differences we find. So a few years back, I did an article came from the World Junior Hockey Championships at the time, the 2015 tournament, which Canada won. There was a press conference after Russia's semifinal win against Sweden. A Russian defenseman named Rinat Valiev was being interviewed. Now, the interesting thing is, there are a bunch of reporters there listening to him. They were all at the exact same interview. They had modern audio recording equipment. They wrote up their reports that day and it was published in the newspapers the very next morning. So we're not talking about 8, 10, 15 years later.
And I suppose no one's going to say, oh, this reporter copied off of that reporter, or they all took it from somebody else's writing.
No, I wouldn't think they would do that. So I took 4 different accounts from 4 different media sources of this very same interview. One from the Globe and Mail, one from the National Post, one from the Toronto Sun, one from the London Free Press. And this isn't even a long event. It's not like an entire 3-year ministry. It's not even like the Passion Week. It's not even like the entire day of the resurrection. It was just a very short little interview. And I compared these 4. And the first thing you notice here is that there are only, of all the facts listed, there are only 2 that appear in all 4 of the accounts. The name of the person, Rinat Valiev, and that he's a defenseman. And they don't even necessarily use the same word because the London Free Press calls him a defender. A second point, the National Post and the Toronto Sun only mention Valiev being there. The Globe and Mail and the London Free Press both mention that there's another Russian, Ivan Barbashev, there. Now, no one would suggest that there's a contradiction between the Post and the Sun mentioning only one man, while the Globe and the London Free Press mention 2. No one would suggest that by mentioning only one, the Post and the Sun are affirming that only one man was present, and that this therefore contradicts the Globe and the London Free Press. Now, does that sound like anything you've heard of before?
It sounds like something about how many angels were at the tomb.
Exactly. When one writer mentions one writer mentions 2. And they say, oh, this is a contradiction. Yet here we see this in a modern account, audio recorded and published the very next day.
Well, what if some critic decided to say, okay, but nobody is claiming that the hockey articles are divinely inspired, so they're allowed to have so-called mistakes or misrepresentations or whatever. So, but the standard's not is much higher for what is something that claims to be divinely inspired.
They could say that, but there's 2 responses to that. First, whatever else the gospel books are, they are historical accounts, and they do need to be treated as historical accounts. But secondly, and more important here, is my point is these are not mistakes. They are discrepancies, are differences, but they're not mistakes. Nobody would say that the National Post made a mistake because they didn't mention that Barbashev was there. They wanted to get across what Rinat Valiev was saying. They didn't bother to mention Barbashev. They never said that Valiev was the only one there, so nobody would say it's a mistake. That's the point. It's not a mistake. We're showing there's the same phenomena here, and here nobody would say it's a mistake. Why would you say it's a mistake in the gospel books? The next point was there was a question given to Valiev, and the Globe and Mail reported it as quoted the actual question and answer. The National Post recorded as part of a statement. Okay, so, but neither of us is wrong. If you look at the ipsissima verba of Valiev, the actual thing, his actual words recorded by the 4 sources, and you put them side by side as we did, and we see they're different. But they're not contradictory. Each writer includes only part of the whole text. And if you look at what they include, there's no contradiction. Globe and Mail, what the Globe and Mail says is included in what the National Post says, not mentioned in the other 2 sources. There's a statement that's in 3 of them, not in the 4th. There's another statement that's in 2 of them, not in the other 2. But none of them actually contradict each other. So you see here too, in normal reporting of an event, if a person is talking, unless you want to record the entire speech, like maybe one of Churchill's speeches or something, you pick and choose which ones to report. And so they don't come out sounding exactly the same, but unless they contradict each other, it's not a problem. None of his statements was recorded in all of the sources. Only one was recorded in 3, a couple were recorded in 2. Then when we look at the narrative material here, there were significant differences in what was reported, how many details were given, how many descriptive details were given. The Globe and Mail is the only one that actually says that Valiev and Barbashev were both present there. The National Post is the only one that comments on the quality of Valyev's English. It says it's somewhat halting. The Globe and Mail is the only one that tells us how old Barbashev is, what position he plays. The Sun and the London Free Press both tell us that Valyev was a Leaf prospect, but only the Free Press tells us he was selected in the 3rd round. And the Free Press is also the only source that gives details about a specific play that Valyev made in that semifinal game. So, again, each writer chooses which of the details to include. Some include more, some include less. But would anybody suggest, do you think anybody would suggest that Valyev did not make that play in the game because only the London Free Press mentions it? No, it would be ridiculous to suggest that. But you see liberal scholars doing that all the time with the gospel books. They'll say, the spear that was plunged into Jesus' side when he was on the cross to make sure he was dead, only John records that, so it didn't happen. Well, yet they wouldn't do that about any current event being recorded, although you see the very same phenomenon. Some events details are recorded by only one source. Now, another point to notice is there does seem to be one glaring contradiction. Okay, the Globe and Mail, National Post, Toronto Sun all report that he plays for Team Russia. London Free Press says that he plays for the Kootenay Ice.
Is the Kootenay Ice a Russian team or something?
It's not a Russian team. And he's playing for the Russian national team. But again, if you look at additional information, you'll see that this is not a contradiction at all. The World Junior Championships is an international tournament where players are picked from their various junior teams, the stars, and assembled on the national team. Valyev for the World Juniors plays for Team Russia. His normal junior team that he plays for year long is the Kootenay Ice. So when you know some of the background information that may not be in the report, something that looks like a contradiction actually isn't. So there you go. If we look at how reporting actually works, what we see here is that the very same phenomena that you observe in the gospel books, the phenomena on the basis of which liberal skeptics claim the New Testament cannot be considered historically reliable, the very same things that they claim are contradictions, we see that in the 4 accounts of this press conference, this interview, which is undoubtedly historically reliable. And we have seen that these so-called phenomena that liberals claim are contradictions in the gospel books are absolutely not contradictions. So anybody who bothers to do this kind of due diligence, looking at modern accounts, would know that, but they don't bother to do it. All of it is coming from their biases, pulling off the top of their heads. They don't do the kind of research that somebody with, say, a background in science would know you need to do. Okay? So, whenever you come to multiple accounts of the same historical event, you need to put them together to see if all the details can be fitted into it from the various accounts. And we did this. We have an article on our website about the resurrection accounts because liberal skeptics claim that these are absolutely irreconcilable, too many contradictory details. And what we show in the article is that's absolutely not true. It's very easy actually to put them together, have one coherent whole with no contradictions in it at all. But that's what you do, where you have multiple accounts. You put the entire story together from all the details of all the accounts, and then see if there are any contradictions.
Thank you, everyone, for listening today. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but please join us for the next part tomorrow. Same time and same place. If you enjoy our content and think this is important material, the best compliment you can pay is by sharing this with your friends and family. This helps us out a lot. Also, if you enjoyed today's program, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to this podcast. We would love to hear from you. Thank you for listening to the Truth in My Days podcast with John Torse. We would love to hear from you. Please feel free to share any questions or comments you may have. You can reach us on Facebook, Instagram, MeWe, and YouTube. Simply search Truth in My Days as one word. Again, Truth in My Days as one word, no spaces in between. And you can connect with us. You may also visit our website for more comprehensive material and to learn more about our ministry. Our website is truthinmydays.com. Thank you.